Are you visiting Tulum or looking for information on the Tulum market? Indeed, you have found the right video. Scams, neighborhoods, nightlife, cost differences between the beach and the town, safety, Airbnbs. I have added timestamps below if you are looking for information about one specific topic. I also have an accompanying blog post that goes into more detail on a lot of this stuff, especially the investing aspect. Stick around until the end when I will share my experience as a traveler here in Tulum. Would I come back? Plus some tips for first-time visitors to Tulum. Now, Tulum is famous mostly because of influencers. You could say it started around 2018 when Azulik, the most Insta-famous hotel on the beach, opened its doors. 1 year later, in 2019, there was a mass shooting in Playa del Carmen, a city just an hour north of here. That prompted some music festivals and events to move, and they chose Tulum. 2020 is when you know what happened. A lot of places were closed around the world, and so a lot of people flocked here. TikTok was just starting to get its grip on social media, and this place exploded. Furthered by Ibiza coming here in 2021. Now, after all the hype, a lot of people shared their experiences, many of which were good, but also many of which were bad. That is a reputational problem that will be a theme throughout this video and in the blog post, and might be a main factor in Tulum's cooling off period, which we are in right now. I am a digital nomad, truly location independent. I've lived in Airbnbs since 2017. I have lived in over 100 cities. Why did I choose Tulum out of all the places that I can go to? There's a very specific reason. I thought that Tulum, if it's going to be world famous, it is still in its early days. Tulum has the potential to be the Bali of the Americas. There are actually very few world-class beach towns. Now, there's one big difference between Tulum and Bali, and that is that the government seems to be making infrastructural changes here. In Mexico, obviously. If you've been to Bali, you know that the government doesn't do anything in terms of infrastructure. Their infrastructure is the roads, the power, the Wi-Fi, anything to do with community good items. Here in Tulum, the government is building an airport. Tulum Airport. They're building a Mayan train to connect the whole peninsula area here. They also have other plans to counteract the seaweed problem, plans to counteract the traffic on those beach roads. This I all thought was positive, and I wanted to come here originally to look at investment deals. Now, what I just said might be better than it sounds, so do stick around and I'll give you my read on the government and what projects they will do and won't do now and in the future, and why they're doing these giant projects. Let's start with the benefits. The biggest benefit is the number of activities to do here. It's insane. I was thinking back to the last month. What did I do? A lot. I free dove a couple of times. I saw the sunset and the sunrise, which is at 7:30 a.m. Kind of cool, pretty late. There's islands. There's cenotes. There's other cities around. I took an afternoon and I floated down a lazy river type thing in a natural canal that Mayans built. I went salsa dancing. I went to digital nomad events. I explored different neighborhoods. I went to the beach clubs. There might be more to do in Tulum than any city I have visited around the world. Another giant benefit that I love is the jungle and nature vibes. Compare that to Cancun and Playa del Carmen, where they have chopped down every tree in sight. Here, they have not done that. And it seems like the government and the developers are actually respecting that as a market demand. The new projects are going up. They're saying, hey, we're devoting 40% to green space, etc. I love that. That is a unique aspect of Tulum that I really hope they keep. The seawater is warm. It's something like 80 degrees. And the last thing, if you're an investor, they've done it before. The Mexican government has done it before. One of the prior presidents looked at the Cancun area, which was nothing, and said, this is where Cancun is gonna be. And look at Cancun, it is a world-renowned destination, which might speak to their ability in making Tulum a world-renowned destination. There's a few more downsides than upsides. Let's start with the scams. Now, I have said I'm an experienced traveler, but even the most experienced travelers get scammed. I have been scammed so many times here. I'm gonna cover 4. If you want more scams, common scams that you must avoid when you come here, go to my blog. I'm going to document all of them there. The funniest or saddest scam that I encountered here was, I have a friend who's living here and he showed me this beach. It's a public beach. So the other day I found this beach over here and I walked there for free from that side. Now that's great. So I saw that beach, great public beach. Later on I saw a parking sign, beach parking. So I was like, oh cool, another beach. How much is the parking? It's 150 pesos, about 10 bucks. All right, you know, I'm new here. I want to check it out, see if it's cool. I just paid 150 pesos to walk in this gate, 150 to park. So I pay this kid, he was by the way like 8 years old. If I paid him 150, I parked there, and then he tells me go through that beach, go through that fence and you're at the beach. So I go through that fence and I'm at the beach, but which those gentlemen are telling me is private beach anyways. So another scam. So I paid this kid 150 bucks to park where there's parking just 10 feet down the road to this other beach. And that was like, I was like, what? Let's move on. From the airport, I bought a SIM card. I paid 500 Mexican pesos, that's about 50 bucks. They gave me a half a day of credit. That was a scam. Now I took a private taxi from the airport to my Airbnb here, and they charged me $367. The actual cost was something like 120. Check your receipts. Now the first time I did laundry, I forgot my ticket, which I always do, never bring my ticket back, and the lady charged me what I thought was a higher amount, and I thought, wait, I thought it was 128, it's 138? She's like, yeah, you forgot your ticket, so I charged you an extra 10. And I was like, oh, wait, is that posted anywhere? No. Was that on the receipt? No. What's the 10 for again? It's 10. I was like, what? Well, how about you give me an exception? So this one was very obvious, but on the receipts, they're going to often charge you extra. Check your receipts. Number 2 downside, bad service, terrible service. Let me just share one story with you that still blows my mind. I go into the beach club that is next to Selena.
When I came in, they said that the minimum consumption is 1,300 Mexican pesos to sit on the beach, right?
That's about 90 bucks. I say, okay, that's great. So she's walking me to the beach, and then I say, oh, you know what? It's like 11. I was like, hey, I'm gonna have some coffee in the restaurant right here on these seats, which is in the restaurant, and then I'll go to the beach. She's like, great. So I sit down, I have my coffee, and then I order lunch, and I say, hey, when it comes out, bring it to the beach. I'm gonna sit there. And they're like, oh, you can't do that.
And I'm like, well, why?
And they're like, it's separate.
Like it is? It's the same restaurant, right? Yes.
So we had a nice discussion. I was like, look, I'm here, it's the same thing, I'm gonna go out there, so you could bring the food here, but I'll just take it out there. I walk out there and a guy at the beach counter says, hey, how can I help you? I said, hey, I'm just gonna have a seat. And he's like, oh, you can't. And I was like, why not? And there's like, these are separate. I'm like, okay, there's a separate menu. And it's like, no, it's the same menu.
So the difference is sitting here in the restaurant or sitting there on the beach. That's bad service. Figure it out.
I still don't know what the problem was. I think it was they couldn't figure out how to tip. This is very tipping culture. You're gonna have a 20% tip charge on everything.
If all that wasn't enough, they had multiple security guards sitting around me, making me feel very uncomfortable, including this guy just behind me, followed me all the way to the door as if I'm not gonna pay or something.
And then of course there was the other time where I go to eat dinner on the beach, and I think it was called Tasty Geisha or Nasty Geisha. It's an expensive restaurant. At the end, there's 3 of us, we're gonna pay with 2 credit cards. And we had to have a discussion, we had to bring the manager over, we can't accept 2 credit cards. Like, why can't you accept 2 credit cards? I just paid $100 for this meal. Accept 2 credit cards. Infrastructure is another big downside that I don't really see going away. When I say infrastructure, I'm talking about power outages.
I just returned from the gym and was told by the receptionist, no hay luz, no electricity. I'm just over halfway through my trip and that's happened
8 power outages. I don't know, the water went off 5, 6 times.
If there's no electricity, obviously the electric stove isn't gonna work. And my cell phone isn't fully charged. It wasn't when I went to the gym, and my computer isn't either. And also when the electricity goes out, the cell towers go out. So I can't even have a hotspot for my computer.
Polluted water and water turning off roads. You can compare it to Cancun or Playa del Carmen. Now, their roads are paved. I anticipate the roads are being paved here. But for the prices that I'm paying here, pave the roads and pave them again next year. They've been here for 6 years now, unpaved. Now, the biggest downside for me is cost versus value. Now, mind you, I'm not talking about just cost. Cost is not necessarily a bad thing. Typically, when cost goes up, value goes up. The most expensive places in the world are the nicest. But that's not true here. Let me give you an example. When you're negotiating things, and everything here can be negotiated, literally everything, what you have to do is whatever their posted price is, you cut it in half, and then you cut it in half again. And that's the price. Now, a taxi, 10-minute taxi ride here, I was quoted 200 Mexican pesos. Remember my rule, half 100, half again 50. It turns out for that same ride in Playa del Carmen, it costs 50 pesos. That's just the agreed upon rate. 50 pesos is like $3, $4. 200 is like 12, 13 bucks. What's the extra value I'm getting here? Now I went to it was called Neek, or the lagoon is Neek, I'm not sure. I went down there and there is a dock with some chairs at the end. We go there, it costs 200 pesos to get in. That's normal, everything costs money to get in here. And then at the end we're told, oh, these are the VIP seats. You can't sit here unless you pay this amount. We're like, how much? And they're like 10,000 pesos. Ooh. Per person. Let's just put that into perspective here, okay? Now they were the nicest seats in the area, but that's like, let's say you're going to a music festival and you want to get the VIP. General admission costs $100. If you want to get to the VIP, that's going to be $5,000. 50x multiple. Were those chairs 50x better than the regular chairs? Were they even 10x? No. But that kind of is an example of how the value to cost here is like overinflated. Like 10,000, are you out of your mind? Guess who sat there the entire 6 hours that I was there? Nobody. I consider seasonality a downside. Now, let me be clear. During my time here, the days, a lot of the days, the majority of the days were perfect. My definition of perfect is just right, 75 degrees, have a nice coffee shop here, gonna read a book. The majority of days were like this. It was awesome. But that happens from December to February, and outside of these months, it gets oppressively hot and humid. I'm talking well into the 90s, over 100, with humidity being such that when you leave your house, you start sweating right away. Very uncomfortable. Accommodations or Airbnbs. Now, if you are a visitor to this area, you have a plethora of Airbnbs to choose from. The only downside is they cost an arm and a leg. 3,500 bucks for an average place like this. If you want to go to that beach road, which is where I wanted to live, you're paying 500 bucks a night, which is way too expensive, but also it's not a livable area. There's no grocery store, there's no gym, there's no barber. Now on my website, DANNYBOOBOO, if you want to go there, I keep track of prices for any city I spend more than 7 days in. And in Tulum specifically, I kept track of prices, the difference between in town, which is where I'm living, and on the beach. If I'm investing in this market, I am considering the Tulum airport and the Mayan train to be big infrastructure projects that's gonna bring a lot to this area. Now you can do it right or wrong. Everyone has their opinions about that. Now what I've learned from the airport and the Mayan train is it's not gonna be all that great. Now, Tulum Airport, let's cover that first. It's 35 minutes from Tulum. Why would they not build it between Playa del Carmen and Tulum? They built it south of Tulum, 35 minutes. That's still gonna be a taxi ride of 500 pesos. What? Now, the government, I heard, is charging taxi drivers $60, I think, to go and pick up someone from the airport. That's gonna be reflected in the price that you and me pay as visitors. Apparently there's another airport that the government built that they did the same thing, and that airport is basically defunct because the taxi drivers were just like, we're not going to that airport. So we'll see what happens there. But regardless, 35 minutes is like, that reduces the time from 3 hours to 35 minutes. But it's like, if you're building a new airport, why wouldn't you really optimize where you're gonna put that airport? I'm really confused as to why they chose that area. Now, you don't have to get a taxi. You can take the Mayan train, which unfortunately, I'm not too bullish on either. A huge aspect of an improvement of this area is connecting the cities. Right now, going to Playa del Carmen seems like a huge issue. Like, seems like the other side of the world. Cancun? Oh my, no. Now, if you can connect these areas, that's going to be great for tourism and people who are living here. How do we do that? We make transit easier. Mayan train would be great. There's only one problem. Now, number one is, I believe, based on my read on the government, which I'll talk about soon, is the Mayan train is going to be expensive. Number two is, as it's planned right now, from the airport, you can take the Mayan train to Tulum, except the Mayan train station in Tulum is really inconveniently located Here's how you would get to downtown from public transit. You take the Mayan train from the airport to the Tulum station. And then you take from the Tulum station down to the public beach, which still costs money to get into, an electric train. And then from that electric train, you go on the beach road back to town via public transit. That is tremendously inconvenient. Now, my read on the Mexican government is that they are doing these big infrastructure projects because they have economic value, substantial economic value, and that's simply why. What they're not gonna do, what you're not gonna see, is parks being built, community centers being built, and that's why there are no parks. There are no green spaces, which I really wish they would do. Increase the livability, the pleasantness of this area for locals and visitors alike. A big one is safety perception. This area has a perception of it's safe. I'm talking about females in general, but everyone, but this is an especially worry about females. I've talked to various females who, if they're foreigners, they say, I feel safe here, this is a safe area. I live in Colombia for a lot of the year, and that has a dangerous perception. The thing is, for a single woman, nothing ever happens to a single woman in Colombia. Single men, yes, there's been some issues going on in Colombia for single men, but single women, nothing, totally safe. It's a very safe country. In Tulum, there was some things that happened between taxi drivers and female passengers. There has been various events, but they're mostly covered up because probably there's certain organizations working together to keep, they understand the perception is reality, and then even though it's not any more safe than a place like Colombia, for example, it might be more dangerous, they are all invested in keeping it that perception as safety, safe for single females. And let me tell you, which is a unique aspect of Tulum, there is a ton of single females coming here to travel. There's a ton of groups of females, bachelor parties, just vacations, coming here. I've never seen such quantity of single female travelers. And a final further consideration I would make if I was an investor here is there's a lot of closed businesses. It seems like there's not many people here.
It's a ghost town out here. There's nobody out here. There's no stores. There's a couple sales offices for residential units. There's not a car behind me. There's not one in front of me.
Now, what I noticed was when I was looking at cafes and laundromats and this and that and restaurants, there was a lot of places that were closed, out of business. It showed open on Google. There's usually a little bit months of delay till someone marks it as closed. And I went there, and a dozen times or more, the place was closed. In other cities that I go to, it happens maybe once. This is my third time coming to Tulum. Now, it's my first time staying here for an extended period. But the interesting thing is, when I came here back in, I think it was 2022, my first time, I have a very similar perception of it back then, just spending a couple days here, and now. Now, there are a bunch of pros, and if you want to read about my experiences back in 22, my initial experiences, I keep notes, travel notes, activities, things to do on my personal website, DANNYBOOBOO.com/travels. You can search your destination. I'm more than likely it's there. Now, back then and now, there's a lot of positives and a lot of negatives. I've mentioned a bunch of them already. I would love to see a mixture of the walkability, the convenience, the beach access, and the cost, although the cost in play isn't particularly cheap, but compared to Tulum, everything's cheap. And combine that with the nature, the jungle vibes of Tulum. I find that there's no Uber being here is tremendously inconvenient a lot of the times, especially if you're in Playa del Carmen. And the other thing is there was a lot of inconveniences for me here. A lot of them are stemming from the power outages, the polluted water, and everyone wants cash. So everyone wants cash. The ATMs charge $5 up to $10 per withdrawal, and the exchange rate is 14%. Like, again, if it needs to be said, I traveled around the world, it's usually 6, 7, 8%. Here it's 14%. That goes back to like the cost value. There's an inflated situation going here. Why are you charging me 14% to give me cash? That's crazy. Why are you charging $10 to allow me to pull out money to spend in your economy? You know, you're brushing your teeth or you're taking a shower and the water turns off. Or you're cooking, all of the stoves here are electric for some reason, and the energy turns off. But you can't go out because no one else has energy as well. You got your laundry done. Okay, it's the next day turnaround. You go there, but it's like, well, we had energy problems, so it was supposed to be today, but it's actually tomorrow. If you're visiting here, Go to Palma Central. I highly recommend it as an activity to do. It's a food truck area. On Tuesdays, they have a salsa free class. Nothing here is free. There's kind of a somewhat required donation, but it's cool. Highly recommend it. And then on Saturdays, it's bachata night. Very fun destination. My favorite gym is StarFit, and my favorite cafe is Cara Feliz, happy face in English. Who should invest here? I would say speculators and or experienced investors. Now I say that because there's so many developments going up right now that I'm in La Valletta right now, which is it was the up and coming area and it is the up and coming area. But there is other areas that are also being developed that in 5 years, who knows what's going to be the winning neighborhood. Aldea Zama is the first mostly completed neighborhood, but there's also other neighborhoods that are closer to the beach. That's probably what I would favor if I was investing here, something closer to the beach. But then again, if it's too close to the beach, is it gonna be somewhere where you could live, or it's just gonna be pure tourism? Is there gonna be grocery stores, cafes, restaurants, gyms? I would ensure the developers who's doing the project has had existing projects. I think a lot of these projects aren't gonna finish because there's simply too many and the growth has slowed to a crawl. I would really want to get clear on the government infrastructure plans. I don't think there is any. I think they will pave the roads. I think they will somewhat fix the power. I don't think the water will ever get unpolluted. And I would check to ensure that the development is unique. And there's a lot of differentiating factors. Now, the thing I noticed here is there is a Tulum vibe here, but it seems like everyone kind of copied each other. Now above my bed, there is I don't know if it's a dream catcher or something, but you can see that design there. Now I kid you not, when I was thinking about this section in the video, I was riding my scooter and I looked to the right, and in the reception of this random building, there was the same exact figure thing being hung up, which kind of illustrates my point. Everyone just kind of seems like they're copying each other, and all of these Airbnbs are the same. In fact, I had a tremendously difficult time choosing my Airbnb, because if you go on Airbnb, you're gonna see just this, they just all look exactly identically the same. I didn't know what to choose. And ensure, if you ultimately make an investment, ensure that there is some clause in there that tells you that the developer is going to finish on time with maybe a 6-month buffer, and there are some clawbacks. You get some money back if they don't finish, and how easy it would be actually to get that money back. I don't think it's going to be all that easy, if at all possible.